And returning to our top story tonight, Volodymyr Zelensky's talks with American and European officials in Berlin to discuss. We're joined by Roland Freudenstein, co-founder of Brussels Freedom Hub. Roland, thank you so much. It's always good to have you back on the show.
Good evening.
So, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has said he is ready to give up on demands for NATO membership in exchange for security guarantees from Western allies. Can Ukraine afford to do that? Or we could see, perhaps in the future, another Budapest memorandum outcome take place?
Well, that's precisely what Zelenskyy has set out to prevent. Another Budapest, another empty set of promises of security that then doesn't materialize when push comes to shove. So he's trying to get security guarantees from the United States, Article 5 like they're called, so that the US would have to intervene in some way if Ukraine gets attacked another time. And I think that the demand of the Europeans and the Ukrainians is very much that there will be European boots on the ground in Ukraine. That doesn't have to be under a NATO label, and that certainly works without NATO membership of Ukraine, but these guarantees have to be in place. And, that is going to be one of the next let's say, stumbling blocks in the attempts to get any kind of deal with Russia, because frankly speaking, I can't see Putin agreeing to those ideas at the moment.
I mean, there are constant maximalist demands on behalf of Russia, so there's definitely going to be more discussion around that. But Article 5-like, you said the security guarantees that would be Article 5-like. From your perspective, what do you think those be? What would be those security guarantees that Ukraine would actually be happy to agree to, that the Western allies would have to put their hearts into and their minds?
Well, I mean, Article 5 itself for NATO member states doesn't specify what exactly member states would do if one of them gets attacked, but that they would do something. That they would take measures, and everybody understands that this would be military help. This would be an intervention to defend the attacked country. So if you transfer that to, if you apply that to the case of Ukraine, definitely there would have to be a direct intervention, for example, air support for Ukrainian troops, for example, increased logistical help for Ukraine's efforts to defend itself. For example, all the continuation of intelligence support and satellite imagery, which is happening today, that all this would definitely happen in the case of another attack on Ukraine. And if you take it to its logical end, an Article 5-like security guarantee from Ukraine for Ukraine by the United States would actually mean that even US extended nuclear deterrence would have to be part of the game, because it is in the case of NATO. So, these are all the potential reactions of Ukraine's allies in case of a renewed attack on Ukraine.
It has also been confirmed, as we know, that President Zelenskyy is planning to come over to Poland this coming Friday to meet with President Nawrocki. And obviously, we know that there have been certain differences between the two presidents when it comes to their diplomatic lines. Would you consider this announcement of President Zelenskyy coming over to Poland already a diplomatic success, or we're not yet out of the deep water?
Well, first of all, it's overdue. I think that or let's say a meeting between current presidents is overdue. The relationship between Andrzej Duda and Volodymyr Zelenskyy was rather cordial, but that doesn't seem to be the case with Karol Nawrocki. So I think that Volodymyr Zelenskyy has all the interest in the world to deepen that personal relationship, to clarify a couple of things in person, and also to discuss not only the details of Poland's crucial support for Ukraine in military terms, but also to talk about the refugees, the Ukrainian refugees in Poland, and talk about Polish-Ukrainian differences, about the nitty-gritty details of Ukraine's future accession to the European Union. And last but not least, there are a couple of open points, I would say, in terms of coming to terms with the painful history between Poland and Ukraine. So overcoming the painful past, doing everything to work towards a common European future in the European Union together. I mean, these will be the topics of the visit.
So you've spoken about the importance of Poland as Ukraine's ally, but we've also seen meetings take place of the Coalition of the Willing or the Allied West for the Ukrainian cause. For example, the latest meeting in London, but we did not have any representation from Poland. Do you think that this meeting that will take place between two presidents could potentially get Poland closer to being present in those very important conversations regarding the future of Ukraine? That is going to affect Poland in many ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, that would presuppose practically that Nawrocki talks Zelenskyy into advocating for Polish membership in the Coalition of the Willing, or the E3, actually, Britain, France, Germany, that at the moment seem to be calling the shots when it comes to Europe's position in all this. This could happen, but I think the reason Poland is not part of that group is not the question of lack of Ukrainian advocacy. It is rather the difficult situation between the government and the president in Poland itself. At the beginning of Poland's EU Council presidency for the first half of this year, I mean, there was every argument for Poland to be in the top group, if you want, in the steering committee of the Coalition of the Willing to support Ukraine. Why has that not come into being? I think it's largely because of the difficult domestic situation in Poland. And if the Polish government and the president could find a way to improve their relations and come to a more constructive position vis-a-vis the outside world, I think it would be no problem at all to have Poland as part of this enlarged leadership committee in Europe. Because Poland belongs there, that is absolutely true. But the reason for that is not to be found in the Polish-Ukrainian relationship, but rather in the vagaries of Polish domestic politics.
I would also like to bring a quote from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. He said, quote, "The decades of Pax Americana are largely over for us in Europe and for us in Germany as well. It no longer exists as we knew it. The Americans are now very, very aggressively pursuing their own interest, and that can only mean one thing, that we, too, must now pursue our own interest. And dear friends, we are not so weak after all," end quote. So that was Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Is this something that Europe was actually ready for, something that Europe was ready to embrace, this shift in the policy of the U.S. Trump administration?
Well, we've seen a lot of moments of shift of the U.S. administration over the last 11 months, right? So, you know, we have this Groundhog Day experience, this constantly repeating a phenomenon of the United States throwing out a statement, and the one that Merz was referring to, obviously, was the national security strategy about 9 days ago, and we have the reaction of the Europeans who seem to be in a panic mode and say that, but now really we have to get our act together. Well, we've been through this a couple of times now. And I think that we are getting closer to a state of affairs where Europe takes its fate into its own hands, but we're not there yet. And Merz's declaration that we can't rely on the United States forever has also been made several times by himself, and even to an extent by Angela Merkel several times. So, you know, it's the real question is whether Europe, instead of making statements like this, finally does something. And here, I would say the jury is still out. We're making progress, but we're not there yet. And Merz himself, in other parts of his statement, his speech in Munich on Friday morning, actually said that we will be dependent on the United States for certain things, such as, for example, nuclear deterrence, for a while to come. There are other parts of defense and military security where we are still not completely autonomous. But we have to start seriously making efforts to get there. And that process has only begun.
And that process has only begun. Roland, thank you so much for joining me on the program. Roland Freudenstein, co-founder of Brussels Freedom Hub, was my guest tonight on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so this would be all the latest news for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all a very good night.